And we're back. Welcome back to the Bardcast. My name's Chris. I play Coriakin, and with me, as always, of course, is
Sammy, and I play Bingro.
Indeed. It's been a little while, but we're really excited. This is our 10th episode, and we got something special to talk about today, which is our opening song. For anyone who doesn't know it, that's actually an arrangement that I did of several pieces by Bingros. You wrote them as a suite about the Shadow Plane in Clanlord, correct?
That's correct, yes. I feel like this song is one of the perfect song to start the podcast with and to end it with, just because I feel like it's connecting the two of us in a way, because it's your music based on my music. So there is it feels like a great compromise. It's not like I wrote an intro and you didn't do anything with that, but it's our music as a whole, and I like that.
Me too. I actually really enjoy taking other people's music and adding my own little twist on things. I've done it several times. I think the first one was probably actually Spring Showers by Zeppel, but I really, really enjoyed this. And I mean, we'll get more into this later, but as soon as I heard your Shadow Suite as a whole, I was thinking, I want to do something with this, and I did.
And I'm so glad you did.
Awesome. Well, I always wanted to ask you, what made you decide to write a suite in the first place? Or where did it come from?
I was about to go into that later, but maybe as a quick spoiler, when I wrote the first movement of the suite, I didn't have the suite in mind yet. I called it Marching Towards the Shadow Plane, and I finished writing the song. I came up with a name. And then I got thinking, okay, now I march towards the Shadow Plane. And what now? And that's when I figured, okay, we do have some more room, some more of the story to explore, to write music to, actually. And that's how the idea came to life.
That's super cool. I always love it when a song takes me in an entirely different direction. The last piece of mine that happened with that I can think of was the song I wrote for Nafaru and that ghost that his character fell in love with, where it was supposed to be a love song between them, and then it ended up being something very, very different. But let's talk about that later. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless you've got anything else to say, I'd love to get into that piece you were talking about, Marching Towards the Shadow Plane.
Maybe one small thing.
Sure.
To me, I just want to get that out of the way. To me, this is one of the great traditions that clan lord bards established over time, stealing someone else's music, stealing in a good way, mm-hmm. Dressing it up a bit differently and presenting it in a fresh manner. I feel like this is one of the greatest compliments you can give to someone else. Just this thought, this music is so good, I want to do something else with it. I feel like this catches me in some way. It doesn't feel like your music is not good enough, but more like it's worthy of revisiting and adding some more ideas to it. So that's where I wanted to ask you, actually. How do you, because this is not the first time you did this, how do you decide which songs are worthy of stealing, kind of? If you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I feel very much the same way. How can I phrase this? I feel very much the same way. It's actually the opposite of your song isn't good enough, therefore I need to fix it myself. It's more like there's so much going on in this song, I want to dive into it and really, really get to know it on such a fundamental level. I can sort of pull it apart and show another way that it could have been. If I were to take these ideas and develop myself, what could I do that's different? Not necessarily better, but just a little bit different. So as to your actual question, which was, what makes a piece good enough to want to be, or I guess, quote unquote, good enough to be... Actually, yeah, you know what? Good is not the right word, though a better word would be appropriate. What makes a song appropriate for turning into an arrangement? I have all these thoughts in my head, but they're all jumbled up. Okay. I think what makes a song like this appropriate for turning into an arrangement is that it has untapped potential to be something else. either it's like for Spring Showers, I loved the piece as it was. I just felt like this piece was written 20 years ago. What could we do with what we know now? Same melodies, but just a little bit fancier. And, if we have two instruments, we got a bit more sonic space to add in different melodies where you can add more musical information in, so to speak, but it's not going to overwhelm it because you have the different instruments to sort of separate out the two themes. So you can have a counterpoint, but it doesn't sound like it's confusing. It doesn't sound like it's overlapping because with different instruments, the ear naturally feels that they're different. With your piece, you had so many, when I say piece, I mean your suite as a whole. You had so many interesting ideas combined in so many interesting ways that I felt like, what if rather than presenting an idea, stop, start again, present an idea, stop, start, what if you could present them as a way that flows more, which is technically not possible in Clanlore due to instrument limitations and limitations on how long your song can be in terms of number of notes. So I thought, what if I found a way to combine them all into one, but it being me, of course. Don't want to just, stick the songs next to each other and have them go one after another. I'm like, what if I could take these ideas and combine them in a different way? And what I didn't realize until after the fact is that as a result of doing so, I almost wrote my own little tiny story based off what you did as well.
Okay.
I sort of created my own narrative. Anyway, so that's a very long-winded answer to this, but the short answer is untapped potential and lots of interesting themes I wanted to play around with.
Very interesting. Yeah, I've been doing this too lately, ripping off other people's music, and I know where you're coming from, and in one specific case, it's more the other side. I felt like I've been robbed of a chance, and I guess we'll talk about that sometime soon as well. And then I wanted to correct that. I wanted to make things as I expected them to be. Not that the original song was bad or anything, but it wasn't what I expected and what something in me wanted to hear.
That's also a very good answer. Sometimes there's just our ear wants to hear it a certain way, and if that's what you want, make it yourself. They always say that if you want something done right, if you want something done right, do it yourself. All right. Well, I'd love to hear Marching Towards the Shadow Plane.
Yes, let's go into that. Okay.
So this was a piece that you wrote first, and you wrote it without a suite in mind.
Yes, exactly.
All
that
right.
was just another Bingro song at some point.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a look. Marching Towards the Shadow Plane. I can see why you decided you wanted to write something after that. That was really, really fun.
Thank you.
So, since you didn't have the suite in mind, where did this piece come from? What made you decide to write it, and how did it come to be?
Well, at first it was just, as I said, another Bingro song. I didn't have anything special in mind, but at that time it was kind of normal to have a Shadow song. And I wanted to have one too.
Mhm.
And the beginning had this marching vibe to it, this marching characteristic. And so I just came up with the title, and more or less a few days after I hopped on and played this at a concert, I wasn't able to attend in full length, but at least got a few minutes in the end. I played the song, and I guess a few days after that, it slowly drifted into my mind that I can't stop here. We marched towards the shadow plane, and I'm not finished. There's so much more that can be told, and I think that's when it slowly came to life. This idea of having a full suite. I think I was pretty fast at deciding on 4 songs for the suite,
Hmm.
but the story was pretty straightforward. It didn't have to be very specific, and it is still very abstract. It leaves some space for everybody who hears it to fill it in with whatever comes into their mind, and that's kind of on purpose, because if I wanted it to be more specific, the titles would have been much longer, or I would have had to write lyrics to the songs, which I'm not very good at, being a German native speaker. And then 4 songs with lyrics after I started with one that doesn't have lyrics, that didn't seem appropriate to me. And yeah, I didn't want to break that. So I went with 4 songs, and yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. Then I started just writing the others, and I think at the time we did already talk about the Shadow themed concert. So I had a deadline, and I really, really wanted to keep that deadline, because writing a Shadow suite and then not being able to present it at the concert where everybody plays their Shadow music, that would have been very frustrating.
Yep.
But I made it. I made it. It was hard, but I made it in the end.
Hmm. It's really useful to have a deadline like that. I had the same issue when I was actually I had a very similar experience when I was trying to write that. I was Zeppel had written a song complaining about being a champion, so I was like, okay, I'll have to write a song about being a healer, and then wait, but I want to write more about being a healer, and that ended up being a suite. And
Awesome.
I had this idea, and then it was like a year and a half later, and I had 1.5 songs or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I need a deadline, otherwise I'm never going to finish this. So, yeah, deadlines can be useful.
You just could have told everybody, let's do a contest, which is about classes,
Oh,
and then you would have had your
I
deadline.
could crowdsource it. There you go. Okay. Yeah.
No, overall, that's how it happened. And the first song, even though it wasn't intended to be, was the rule set, so to speak, for the suite as a whole.
Hmm.
Because I started with many things that are going through the whole suite up until the very last, or even the epilogue, so which I wrote way after that concert. But there are many things in this very first song that stuck with me, and I set some challenges for me over the course of those 4 songs that all have their root in this first song.
Cool. Do you want to talk about a couple of those things?
Yes, sure. I think we touched on a few of those already in our second episode when we talked about the third movement.
Hmm.
But maybe as a quick reminder, we've been talking about the different keys and how there are 2 main keys that represent light and shadow or darkness to me in this whole episode, in this whole suite.
Hmm.
And the light key is going to be, or was C minor, mainly because almost every song I wrote until this time was in C minor, if not I think that I did 3 or 4 different ones. One of them being the song I wrote for Sinos.
Hmm.
And the other key is A flat minor, which has so many flats, which lower than the note halftone step, which symbolizes something bad. And yeah, that was how I decided on those keys, or I found the keys in the first song to be appropriate and inspiring. I found them inspiring as a set of keys to work with, and also have my own little music theory to work with.
Hmm. Yeah, that combination works really well, and it. What was I going to say? Yeah, the combination works really well. Even if you don't know much about music theory, you can hear that the notes, when they're lowered, it does sound a little bit, I guess you'd call it darker, which I think adds that feeling of unease to especially that A flat minor key that you were talking about.
Yeah, and in the first song, it's just a few chords in A flat minor because we aren't in the shadow plane, so that works perfectly, even though not specifically intended. But it's only a hint at the shadows, at least in retrospective, how we can interpret it, and it worked for me, and that's why I stuck with it, and I still like the idea of this little bit of foreshadowing, um, pun intended. The shadows are present, but only very slightly. They're not too present. They're weak, more like a an idea or a something that's going to be a topic for us. The shadows that A flat minor as an omen, as a bad omen.
That's a very evocative word. I love it. Perfect. Well, then, let's take a look at the second piece, if you're up for that. Shadows Overwhelming. Um, Anything you want to introduce it with, or shall we just go right into it?
Maybe something to listen to. Maybe even if you could now play the last few chords of the first movement again, because that's something I did through not throughout the whole suite, but at many points. I when I end a song, I try to start the next song in the same or similar way. It's not always the same note or the same chord, but this time the first movement ends with a block chord, and the second movement starts with a block chord, which is pretty full and rich and has many notes in it.
Well, in that case, let's actually listen to it. The end of Marching Towards the Shadow Plane, right into the beginning of Shadows Overwhelming.
There we go.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that the opening. As soon as you played it for me, one song leading to another, I instantly was able to feel like, oh, I see how these flow together. Nicely done.
Yeah, I wanted to not only have it called a suite, it should there should be a connection between the songs. And I felt like this is a very
Hmm.
subtle way the songs are played on their own, but a very strong way in terms of as soon as it's presented in a row and in the proper manner as it is meant to be, but we don't have the time for that mostly. But yeah, that was also the I had the opportunity to really heavily emphasize the A flat minor at the start of this. This is very much we are in the shadow plane now, and it is overwhelming.
Hmm.
The huge block chords are overwhelming, and we don't get very far from that because after those huge block chords, we still stay in A flat minor for a very long time. They are overwhelming. They are everywhere, and that was what I wanted to do there. I wanted them to seem dangerous. You can't really escape them, at least for the most part. There's only one thing. The structure is pretty simple. It's intro, then it's A section, then it's B section, then it's A section again, and then it's outro, kind of. And only the B
Hmm.
section, which is only heard once, is in C flat, in C minor. Everything else is in A flat minor.
Interesting. Any particular reason why you made the B section in C minor, or did it just work out that way?
No, I that was we are in the shadow plane. It's still us from the light
Ah,
part, but we're surrounded by shadows, kind of.
right. We're in the middle. We're
Yeah,
trapped on either side. Gotcha.
exactly.
I see it.
So
Cool.
that was meant to be that way. What wasn't intentional, but I liked very much, is when we get those huge block chords again, and suddenly they're pretty much the same than in the beginning, but now they have this triplet feeling. That wasn't intentional, but I liked it because it was the same but different as well. And it gave me the
Hmm.
opportunity to end on this high A flat, which then sets up the following piece.
Hmm. I actually really enjoyed that as well. I very much enjoyed the fact that that end part had an almost triplet feel because I was able to take advantage of that too later.
Yeah, true.
But we'll talk about that. Also, I noticed that you ended on the single note at the end, which was a very interesting contrast to how, as you said, overwhelming the whole piece was. And I can see how it's going to lead into the next piece already. But yeah.
Yeah, and you know the next piece very well. We've been talking about this for a while, and we've established it's both our favorite part of the suite.
Anything else you want to mention about the Shadows Overwhelming?
Maybe yes, one thing. It also was a deliberate choice to switch up the instruments. I'm known to like the guitar maybe a little bit too much.
Mhm.
It's just a cool instrument. It's so versatile. It can do anything you like. It has very clear cuts at the beginning of it. It has a strong, what's it called?
Attack.
Attack. And but it has also a clear ending. So you can really nicely work with it in terms of rhythmic figures. It doesn't fade out like
Hmm.
many other instruments, like the harp, for example.
Yeah, and sometimes you do want an instrument that has more sustain, like the harp that notes last for a while, even if they're short notes. But especially if you're writing something with complicated rhythms, that can make everything muddy. So having something that's very snappy, like the guitar, is a very good thing.
Yeah, and I wanted to mix that up. I didn't want to write a guitar suite. So
Hmm.
I think at first this song was written with guitar in mind, but at some point I thought, no, I can't play three guitar songs in a row and then come up with a harp song and call it a day. That no, that wouldn't be appropriate. I wanted to mix things up, and that's why I chose to switch to Vibra, I think midway through the writing process of this song.
Hmm. Well, having poked around with these notes myself, I can see that it does work on guitar. but also I think what you were going for in terms of the overwhelming sound, I do think Vibra is a better choice. The fact that it has that sparkly sound in the highest register, but when you use the lower notes like you've used in these chords, it does have a bit more of a darker sound. It's very full, and I don't know, like it's still hard for me. Maybe it's just my own cultural context, but it's hard for me sometimes to not hear these big chords and think a little bit of like not exactly church bells, but somewhere close to there.
Mm-hmm.
Just something. It seems not religious, but it makes me think of like a horror movie or something.
Mm-hmm.
It does add a little bit of weight to it.
Yeah, and I do see your point with church bells very much because in another song we haven't talked about yet, and that is not too well known because it's for organ and vibra and guitar, I think.
Mhm.
I do actually use the vibra to symbolize church bells.
Interesting.
So that we will talk about that some other time, but I do feel where you're coming from, and I really much feel the same. It has some gravitas to it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, again, I'd love to talk about that, but we do need to talk about my favorite movement of the suite. So, unless there's something else you want to say, I'd love to get on to Light is Shadow's Death. All right. Here is the end of Shadow's Overwhelming into Light is Shadow's Death. I love that movement so much. It's just so cool.
Yeah, I do really much like it as well. It's it was a piece of work to get it there. What do I want to talk about with this song? We have talked about it. We did talk about it in the second episode. So I feel like maybe give everybody and you especially some context, some ideas of how does this writing process, this how do I develop ideas? How does this work? And because it was a struggle for me. It was the last piece of the suite I wrote, actually. I didn't write them in chronological order. I started with the first one, yes, but then I came up with fourth, then the second, and this actually was the last one I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted it to be something in a fast pace because it's more or less the climax of the story. I wanted it to have at least some parts that are pretty fast and engaging. And it took me a while to come up with something. Mostly, I did experiment with different chords, how to get from A flat minor to C minor and back. And one chord progression was this chord progression. So the idea behind this chord progression is pretty much the second chord, where we have a B flat, an E flat, and a G flat, and the G flat just goes up the semitone to the G, and then leads into an A flat minor chord which is part of the C minor scale.
Oh,
That was the
sorry,
idea
actually, I
behind
think you
that.
might have misstated it. Yeah, so you're going from A flat minor through E flat minor,
Yes.
becomes E major or E flat major to A flat major. Okay,
Yes.
that's
A flat minor.
clever. I like that. I like that.
Exactly, yes. And then I end up in the C minor scale. And I took this concept and tried to give it some more depth, some more rhythmic ideas, something to work with, and that sounded like this. There was the switch.
I can see the pattern there already. Yeah, it's. Can I just check one thing?
Yes.
I love the way. So your top note there is the E flat. The Ooh, I love your little semitone movement down there from like the B or C flat down to B flat. That's where we get the C natural for the first time to indicate that we have switched. We have modulated. Cool.
I prepared the C, the C with the G in the line before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I went
C
from
natural
G flat
as opposed
to
the
G
C
natural.
flat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
Cool.
the idea. But it didn't sound very interesting, and the idea was cool, but didn't lead anywhere. So I scrapped that. I came up with something completely different, and I wanted to mimic a military drum and to symbolize the fight between shadow and light. And that sounded like this.
Well, that's interesting. Before you say anything, it sounded not much like what's happening until the very end there. I started to get little hints of where this ended up being there right at the very end. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, that was just an idea, and I liked the idea again, but it didn't feel like it was going somewhere. So it took me a while, and those are just a few examples of, I think, 4 or 5 during this time. And all the time the pressure was mounting up, and I knew the concert is going to be very soon. And so it was a huge, huge, huge relief when I finally got this catchy rhythmic idea that ended up being the foundation of the A section. And what I brought with me today also is an earlier version of the song, so you get some idea how, as you know, the polished, the refined song actually sounds like, and what did an earlier version sound like, and where are the differences, and what does it mean to polish a song, at least for me. What are your thoughts?
That is fascinating. So I realize what I was noticing about the end of your previous idea. I think it was around here. Um, I mean, it's very much sort of like the standard military drums, but at the end where you start to change up the rhythm a bit, that's where I'm starting to see a little bit of what would become the rhythm at the bottom there. Maybe you weren't thinking about it, but
I was.
I can tell a little bit of intros. I can see this. This very much sounds like what my earlier versions of songs sound like. So all the ideas are there. Um, I am glad you put so much time into this. It may have taken a while, but one thing I love about this piece is the transitions. The end of your theme, how you get into that. I don't have the notes here. I think it's this part. Yeah, this one right here. This transition is amazing. I love it. But having it not go where I want it to and where I know it can go is infuriating.
That was a brain teaser to figure out where I want to go with
Yeah.
this. I think I even asked you about that, at least in theory. I have this chord and I wanted to go somewhere, but I can't figure out where it actually wants to go. And you came up with a few smart things that were too much for my brain to process. You were talking about what was
That
it?
sounds like me.
Diminished chords. And I have not worked with
Oh,
diminished
yeah.
chords whatsoever up until now. At least not that I meant to do it. And I didn't feel comfortable starting with it at that point because I was already under pressure. I wanted it to I wanted to get somewhere. So even though your thoughts
Mm.
were pretty smart and would have worked for you, for me at that time they didn't. So I had to figure out some other way, and so I ended up where we ended up now with a complete song.
Yeah. No, it worked really well. Well, I think the whole thing worked really well, but for anyone who doesn't write music, whenever you listen to something amazing at the end, you never know how much work goes into it. There are times when just magically the stars align and a piece comes out just like from inspiration or whatever, almost fully formed. But that's the exception. Usually it's a lot of hard work trying to put ideas together in different ways and seeing what actually makes sense. And a lot of stuff ends up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, and some musicians find it to be easier to think harmonically. For me, it still is some work, but it's work I like to do. I like to have this brain teaser moments where I feel like, okay, I figured something out, and I found a completely new way of moving from one key to the other that nobody has ever thought of, which is totally nonsense, but. You get the point. I feel like I'm a genius at that when I do that. That is very hard work, at least for my brain. Maybe I'll put it that way. And but mostly that is also the reason why I start being proud of something because I know the work behind it and I know how much I struggle to get to that point.
And I think that, at least for me, I can really see that. I can tell when someone's put in the work to really think about every single little detail. And it's entirely possible that that's one of the reasons why I decided to arrange this, because you put so much work into all those little details. It gave me so many parts to steal from to combine into a new whole.
Yeah, and
So,
the other thing that should have stood, oh, probably stood out when you heard it, we are
mhm.
missing that intro.
Yes.
At that point in my writing process, I didn't have the intro yet. I knew I can't start it that way because I had this thing with I ended the song before that with a single note, so I'll have to start with another single note. That's why this is an early version, and I knew this is not finished. I often do this that I put the rhythmic foundation at the beginning of a song and build the song on that. And I didn't want to do it this time because that was too easy and too boring at some point. If you maybe you feel the same or felt the same when we listened to this version, it was pretty lengthy. It wasn't that interesting. The rhythm is engaging, but by the time we get the melody, we're hearing the rhythm for the third time. And I feared that I'd lose the audience by playing it too often.
Hmm. I know what you mean. I felt the same way about my own pieces, and I am actually very picky about intros now because I feel like they set up the audience's expectations, and you want to have enough of an intro that people know what to expect, so that they get accustomed to the accompaniment. So when the melody comes in, they can focus on that. They're not distracted by, oh, is this part from the accompaniment actually part of the melody? And obviously, they're not thinking of this consciously, but I feel like it's happening at an unconscious level. But at the same time, like you said, if you've gone through the pattern twice, it's too long. So, was that when you say it happened during the writing process? Did it happen relatively early or relatively late? Adding the
I
intro.
think this was already pretty far into the writing process. I personally see three things I changed. One is pretty minor, the intro we talked about, and the harmonic thing at the end of the A section. Those are the three things that are the main differences between the song we know now and this version. So I think it was pretty late in the process,
Interesting.
but I think I always knew that the intro has to be changed, and eventually it was changed, and I like the way it sounds right now with this new intro. It's different.
Yeah, I personally could not imagine this without that single note intro. I feel like it's actually an integral part because again, you're setting up audience expectations. So with it, when you start off with it, people are like, "Oh, it's a sort of it's just a single note melody, no harmony. It's kind of mournful. What are we getting into?" And then when you bring in the exciting rhythmic pattern and everything, it's a surprise. And I think that makes it really, really effective.
Yes, and for me it was also a story-driven decision. I start this intro on
Mm.
in C minor, and I modulate at the end to A flat minor. The idea behind this, and we talked about this in the second episode, but just to reiterate, we start in C minor, and it's a single melody. It's a weak melody in my mind. It does have some harmonic strength in it. We do have the fifth, we do have the third. We know where we are. We know we are the light at this point.
All right. Sorry. Actually, why don't I play it and you can talk over it? Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, we start in C minor. It's weak, at least in my head. It sounds weak, but it's strong harmonically, so we know we are in C minor.
Still in C minor. Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, we modulate slowly to A flat minor, but only at the very end.
Yeah, I could hear that even up to here. We're still definitely in C minor. And you're on the A flat there, but it could still be part of the same key.
Yes.
And here's our C, and that's where we change just at the very end. Interesting.
Yes.
Cool.
And then we have this small rhythmic figure, da, 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 which gets louder.
And then we're into the full thing.
That's E flat and A flat, which are notes that are present in both keys. So that is mainly where the transition is actually happening.
Interesting. That's really cool.
It sounds seamless because there kind of is no seam except this rhythmic figure.
Yeah, I love the way that you're using the E flat and the A flat to add ambiguity, where it could be either until you hear that big A flat minor chord there. So, yeah, and
Exactly.
repeating notes, especially if they're ambiguous, is a good way to transition between two different keys. Cool.
And also, it helped me adding this rhythmic bass line, this rhythmic vibe that we get in the A section after we came out of this intro, which is a single melody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it helps to provide the momentum to build up to the big chords, and um, I mean, theoretically, if you hear them by yourself, if we hear them by themselves, the first part, you're not sure exactly what the speed or like the tempo is, but having this part before it really locks in. This is now our defined tempo, which is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Sorry. Yeah, effective. I think it works really well. I love this movement so much I could talk about it the whole time, but we should probably move on.
Yeah, probably, but that's fine. I think I don't have anything else that I wanted to say.
Cool. All right.
If anybody is still missing a few things, listen to the second episode of our podcast.
Okay. Well, let's listen to the end of Light as Shadow's death and then go right into the final movement, which is still Shadowdreaming. So here is the real ending of the piece. And then finally, at the end of the entire suite, we get the C major chord.
We get the C major chord, yeah. That was something I felt like we're in C minor a lot, and it's still C minor, which is yeah, it's my home base, so to speak, my light key. But I wanted to have a major chord at the end, and I felt like C major. Tell me another major chord that's more prominent than that one. But also, you might have heard the ending of the third movement and the beginning of the fourth movement don't have too much in common. It wasn't planned that way, but it feels like it's okay. Story-wise, we are sometime after the battle between Light and Shadow. There is a cut. The song for me stands for the aftermath of the experiences someone had in the Shadow plane. The shadows are still there. There is some A-flat minor in there. They're still clouding the mind at night, and not all the experiences from the shadow plane have been fully processed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are. That's why I felt it's okay to not have this connection at this point. Other than that, the song is quite a bit different from the others. It's very slow and dreamy, and harmonically there's more happening than in the other songs. We were wandering around way more, and the idea behind that was just like your thoughts when you fall asleep. Then you're wandering around with your thoughts, you end up everywhere, and that's kind of what I try to portray here as well.
Hmm.
And then at the end we have the C major chord, and that everything works towards that. But overall, with this song, we're not quite yet healed from what we experienced. That unresolved state prompted me to write the epilogue. We can talk about that some other time. It's not part of the mashup as well. So I think we that's okay to leave out. But that is why I actually wanted to write something else after the suite.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The recovery is mainly about the lyrical self getting back into their normal life, hunting, having some kind of day-to-day life without shadows, and that's why A flat minor is almost not there in the epilogue.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. Yeah, we should dive into it another time, but I am very
Yes,
excited to talk about the arrangement. So let's leave it for another way, for another day.
that's totally
Cool.
fine.
Well, I mean, as individual songs, they're all really cool. As a connected suite, I think it works really, really well. And I, it was fun to like really dive into it and start picking it apart and putting it back together again.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I think there's a lot of work going just into understanding the structure, the harmonics, with a song that you haven't written yourself. That is work as well. You haven't even started writing a single note, but you have to think about what was the other person doing actually, music theory wise, or what was intentional, what wasn't intentional, what's happening here, what's the rhythm, why does it work? That's all things you have to think about, and then you haven't even connected two parts. That's the crazy thing about your mashup for me.
Mm.
It's so seamless in how it transitions through all those through all those pieces, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's so crazy to me. But maybe let's first hear it
Yeah,
so
let's do it.
everybody can follow.
Just on,
What you think?
just before I talk about it too much, just on the subject of seamless transitions, a recommendation for anyone who's seen the Hamilton musical. Weird Al Yankovic did a Hamilton polka, which does exactly the sort of thing we're talking about, where it takes a bunch of different songs, mashes them up one after another, but again with seamless transitions. I mean, it's polka; it's supposed to be silly, but it works really well. So anyway, here's what I came up with taking these ideas. I knew that I wanted to focus on making this a fun experience to listen to. I actually put a lot of weight on the first listening because like you were talking about, I want to have some surprise. Why are things going to places they're not supposed to? Where could things be going next? But at the same time, I want to make sure that it still has enough interest in it because humor is so and surprise are so based off of like a first listening. I still wanted there to be something there even on subsequent listenings. So let's take a listen. And before I talk about it, listeners, hopefully you can find all the parts that I put together.
That's a really special song. Thank you for writing it.
Oh, I was really happy to. I was really, really happy to. It was super cool. Yeah, it was a really, really fun experience writing this. There was so much going on there. It was a real treat to dive into all the different movements. What's really interesting is a bunch of the stuff you were talking about I actually missed, and it was only after talking to you I realized, oh, these are the things he was going for. This is what I was going for. But this is what I love about music. Two people can look at the same notes and come up with different interpretations, different ideas, and that's what leads to these different arrangements and different ways things could have been.
Yeah, but that totally makes sense because you can't look into my head, and sometimes I had a hard time thinking about what was I thinking 2 years ago when I wrote this actually. I'm lucky enough to have all those steps in between during my writing process. I do have quite a few fragments, so I was able to remember based on those things what I actually was thinking, and I can only imagine how it was for you not having had those thoughts beforehand.
Well, I unfortunately most of the time, how can I put this? A lot of times when I'm working on pieces, I will save backups, sort of working copies, just so that if I decide I don't like a change, I can go back to an earlier version. I didn't do that this time. Unfortunately, I was looking at my very first backup of my Shadow Suite revision or mashup, and it's mostly fully formed. It's just like not quite done. So I don't have a lot of these working copies, other ways things could have been. But I can definitely happy to talk about what I used where, and I don't want to be too technical about how I cram things together, but I can talk a little bit about that, hopefully in a way that's not too off-putting to our less enfranchised listeners.
What I would find very interesting is your decision making. Why did you decide to go that way? For example, why did you choose to not go in a chronological order?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you mix this up? You start off with the fourth movement, which is the end.
Yeah, well, you're start asking the good questions to right off the bat. So
I'm sorry.
Oh no, these are good questions. So part of the fun for me, as I mentioned before, is I don't know whether to call it humor or surprise, but defying expectations. Part of the fun of this is just changing things up. It doesn't have to be the way it was, and I was seriously considering starting the entire piece with that single note melody from Light as Shadow's Death, actually. Because you call it a weak melody. I really, really like it. I think it's a very effective melody. It doesn't have a lot going on, but I think its simplicity is what makes it effective in my mind. I decided eventually, obviously, to put that at the end instead, but how was I going to start? I kind of liked the idea of starting at the end. Maybe this is a dream. Maybe this whole thing is a dream of the shadow plane. And then all the subsequent things that happen are things that are happening. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't thinking as overtly as, oh, this is Coriakin, who's still dreaming about his experiences in the shadow plane previously. But I can't say for a fact I wasn't thinking about that on some level.
I feel like this is actually a nice thing. I like the Tolkien way of putting this suite. Tolkien designed Middle Earth to be a world where everybody could contribute if they want to. Tolkien had this world which is pretty thought out, but in his mind it always was, if you have a story that is playing there, please write it down, publish it, I don't mind. The richer the lore, the better. And I like thinking of the suite in the same way. It leaves a lot room for interpretation, and not always is your interpretation better than mine. It's just different. And if you got this idea, okay, maybe it's just a dream, that is your way of interpreting my song or my songs different, but that doesn't make it wrong.
That's cool.
And I like that thought.
Yeah, I never knew that about Tolkien, and I love that attitude. I feel very much the same way about music. I think music is to be shared and to be stolen from and to be reinterpreted and all these things. And I mean, there's a huge tradition, like variations on a theme by Haydn or whatever it is, like going back hundreds and hundreds of years. It's been around forever. So, yeah.
The Dies Irae.
Oh, yes, of course.
We don't go into this direction today.
We can talk about.
Oh, we'll sit here tomorrow.
Yeah, if we talk about the history of real life music, then we won't have time to talk about the history of Clanlord music. All right. So let me talk you through my. I can't go through my decision-making process, but I can tell you what's there and why I think I chose it. Hopefully that'll be close enough.
I guess it will.
So I decided to start. I knew that I wanted to build up to Light as Shadow's death. I always knew that was, like you said, the climax of the piece. We're going to get there eventually. So what can I start with where it's the amount of movement, the amount of tension, the amount of excitement is a lot lower. So the dreamy quality of Shadowdreaming I thought worked really well for that. The other thing about it that I really liked was that it was very, I'll use a texture word, it's very sparse. There's not as many notes. So, I mean, this is what we've got. And while that's a perfectly serviceable, very nice melody, there is room for something else to add in there. For anyone who noticed, and probably not that many people did, the harp is actually started right at the beginning, but all it's doing is this. It's just doubling the bass notes. It's supposed to come in invisibly. Sorry, my phone went off again. Darn it. So the harp is supposed to come in basically invisibly. If I add everything back in, if you're listening very, very carefully, you might be able to hear it at the bottom there, but probably not. And so the harp, you only hear it sneak in when it has its own rhythm at the bottom. So I wanted, again, an opening that was very much part of the piece, not the original opening of the first movement, but also where I could sort of sneak the harp in and explore how these two instruments can work together. So after 2 times through, I decided, well, what if we have some more of the harp? So now it's doing its own rhythmic thing, but it's actually pausing at the top there. And it's only on the last time through that we get the whole... Now, I don't know if you could hear, but the harp actually joined in with the guitar there as well. And I know I wasn't going to get into too much of the technical aspects, but a theme of what I'm going to talk about is going to be, are the two instruments working together, or are they sort of not quite competing, but at odds with each other? So here we have the full harp part. The movement continues, and we've sort of been building up to more and more excitement. But now, of course, we've built up. Where do we go? Do we go further? No, we go somewhere entirely different. And again, this is part of the fun, being like, where are we building up to? It could go somewhere. I know in your original, you slow down just like I do here. I use your exact same transition, but go somewhere else. We go to the big block chords from Shadow's Overwhelming. This time, I decide to have the chords only in the guitar. And if I take out the harp, it's essentially unchanged. And, I mean, there's 2 reasons for that. One is the original is cool. I want to keep it that way. The other thing is, I mean, if you copy-paste, you don't have to do as much work, so, you can be lazy.
But also, I feel like you chose to go with the guitar for the block chords. I feel like the harp is way more similar to the vibra which is used in the original suite. So what made you switch to the guitar?
It was actually what's going to happen next. So I wanted to keep the chords in guitar, and then the harp plays all by itself. It's not working together with the guitar anymore. And that is for a couple of reasons. One is I like just the sound of the low harp. those low notes are actually hard to hear. So when you play them all by themselves, it brings them out. But I wanted to have the harp take on the melody in the next point, so I needed to draw the listener's attention to it. People naturally hear melodies from the top notes. That's just the way our ears work. If you want something down low to stand out, it really needs to stand out. So in this case, you hear the harp by itself. I'm sort of priming the listener to pay attention to what's happening down there in the bass. And it may be hard to hear, but if I go back to Shadow's Overwhelming for just a moment, and we'll pause for a moment during this, I guess. If you take a listen to Shadow's Overwhelming, take a listen to this. Now listen specifically to the melody. If you take a listen to that, now try and take a listen to the bottom of the harp part.
Yes.
So I knew, again, it's all about recrystallizing things. It's turning things on their head. It's putting things in different ways. I thought that melody would sound really good in harp, but I also thought, what if I slowed it down a bit? I think it adds to that sort of mournful or wistful quality, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think another way it could have been. So what I did technically for this part is I decided to keep the block chords in harp because again, the guitar sound is very direct. It's got a strong attack, whereas the harp is a bit more of a mellow sound in some ways. So having those block chords on harp takes a bit of the edge off. But then I wanted to keep the guitar going, so I have it playing the alternating notes, the slightly more rhythmic part of the accompaniment. And I think it works really well as as a texture. The problem is how, with all this going on, can you make people actually hear the harp melody? So step one was to preload it over here. But the other thing was to add a little bit of those little fiddly bits that I'm so known for. Having more active notes brings emphasis, brings the ear's attention. Plus also, I mean, I'm writing my own thing here. I need to add a bit of myself too, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. You should do that. It's not it's a Bingro idea, but it's not a Bingro song anymore, and that's totally fine.
Cool.
No, actually, I have never heard this before consciously, and I won't be able to unhear it now. That's one of those moments. I love those moments. I think I didn't hear it because it's so unexpected. Yeah, you prepare it, but it's still so subtle and it's still slowed down that in my mind I didn't recognize it. And now that I know it, it's clear as day. And I think I'm not the only one. I think that's something everybody will hear from now on.
Oh, I'm delighted. I had so much fun back in the day listening to the podcast by the lead designer of the Magic Cards game, Mark Rosewater, and he talks about something called lenticular design, which lenticular was the word for those old Magic Eye pictures, if you remember those, anyone who was alive in the 90s. But it's the idea of there's something there that's invisible until you really, really look for it. And I love that in my music. And again, that's how I feel like I can add lasting appeal. So yeah, there's all the fun of like new sections appearing like unexpectedly, but there's also hopefully some little things hiding in there that only appear after you've been listening and after you listen really closely. So this melody in the bass, listen to it. It's all there. It's all there.
And both of us know it's so much fun to hide these things too. It's not only hearing them, but figuring out how and where to hide them is a lot of fun as well. Just like I did with the duck song in Knusprige Ente.
Oh yes, I'm looking forward to talking about that.
I said it now. Everybody knows how it's pronounced, and
Indeed.
I'm expecting everybody to know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. All right. Anyway, moving on. So So without the guitar port, the melody's a little bit more obvious. But again, because it's slower, it is hard to hear. If I add everything back in, it sounds more like this. This was lots of fun, but I'm like, okay, where's it gonna go next? We need to start building up the excitement and energy. And that sounds very fancy, but it's literally just take everything, shuffle it up one semitone each time. We're modulating up from... Where were we? So I have to admit, I didn't particularly pay attention to the keys of things because I had to shuffle it around for note considerations. I mean, again, C is the bottom note, so you have to move things up or down based on it. So I started in G minor, and here I knew I wanted to modulate up to C minor, which is by way of going to A flat, or A minor, B flat, B natural, and then here's those three chords again, but just like you did in your piece, what if I make them a triplet? And at this point, the triplet feel is getting stronger, the pace is picking up, and we're going to our next spot, which is Shadows Overwhelming. We go back to the shadow overwhelming chords, but now, just like you did at the end, we've got this triplet feel. And I decide that let's take this somewhere that has triplets. So we've walked up to C minor, we're in a different key, and now I want to start building up the momentum. I want to go to somewhere a little more exciting. So the addition of those 16th notes right there, I think, is what really starts to solidify, okay, we're definitely going to marching towards the shadow plane. And maybe that's not obvious, but it feels like we're really going there. I think of the transitions in this piece, this might be my favorite, because it's very confusing. It could go anywhere. No one's quite sure where it's going, and once we get there, we're like, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. But at the time, it was unexpected.
Yeah, and maybe I'm not correct, but you reused the technique of doubling the same note, right?
Yes, sorry, which one do you mean? Where? Oh, do you mean in the different instruments, or?
No, for the marching song, I doubled the C and G.
Yes. Yeah, I got you. I understand now.
And that's a technique I stole from Brakshasa. At least that's where I got it from.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been using it in the marching drum song that we listened, or that fragment that we listened to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I used it there as well. So I was thinking maybe you probably reuse it here as well.
Yeah. So it's the C and G. It's that open fifth. Also called power chords on guitar, or I mean, that's one kind of power chord on guitar, is a very open sound. It doesn't indicate whether you're in major or minor, so it really works when it's repeated to give you that ambiguity that you were talking about earlier. But yeah, so what I did here is I basically reused your texture, your way of doing things. Let me just see. So we're building this up. Yeah, so if you listen, what I've got there is I've divided up the accompaniment again. I've got the melody and the repeated bass in harp, and I've got the chords in guitar. This is... I think I decided to keep the melody in harp here because the melody during this transition spot, this one I'm talking about, felt like it was in guitar. So again, we're sort of passing it back and forth. So we have here... Yeah, because the guitar has that sharper attack we were talking about earlier, I feel like it works really, really well for these these offbeat rhythmic figures. I do think if I was doing that and the bass, it would probably be too much. You wouldn't be able to hear the harp so well. And to be honest, I felt like I was worried we couldn't hear the harp anyway, so what I've actually done is doubled the harp at the octave. If I were to take out some of it, it might sound more like this. And you'll notice instantly it's actually hard to hear compared to this. I mean, it's not that much different, but it's obvious to me. Anyway, so I wanted to keep this marching towards the shadow plane theme here. It's such a fun, like, riff. The repeated notes, like you're talking about, we're building up the momentum. And you'll notice that specifically during the spots where the melody rests, I add a little bit more excitement in the guitar part. And again, just a little bit, enough to create some interest, but not so much that we're having trouble discerning the melody or confused what the main part that we're supposed to listen to is. And for this part, I actually liked the B section as well, or maybe it was... So I actually don't know what I was originally thinking. Was I thinking this is an A theme and a B theme, and I want to include them both? Or did I just think this is all like the main theme, let's just stick it all in there? Either way, it was fun, so, it worked. I liked it. Let's do it.
That's enough, mostly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but I did decide to put the melody in the guitar here. Again, just trying to change things up. And I might have been putting some of my own little tiddly bits in there, but, I always do that. I can't stop. I can't stop doing it. The other thing is when you're doing a trio like this, or a duet, it's a lot easier to do little tiny tempo changes like triplets and stuff like that if you need to, which I don't think I did here, but I've definitely done in other situations. Anyway, where did I go after this? Oh yeah, I think I used the same transition as well, again from Marching Towards the Shadow Plane. But I think you just have one extra chord and go back to the melody there, whereas I realized we're going to go somewhere else. Time to change things up a bit. So, and I used the trick like we were talking about earlier of repeated notes to transition. Although the hard part here was I'm going from 6/8 time to 4/4. How can I do that in a way that doesn't it doesn't sound rough? It doesn't sound awkward. And again, stop, repeat a few notes, and then you have that ambiguity where you could be in either, and then you... So at this point, it sort of feels like almost like we're in 2. That transition right there, we could just for a moment still be in 6/8. And then we're like, okay, no, we're definitely locked into 4/4. And this is my favorite part of the whole piece. Because I was able to steal the texture from Light as Shadow's Death and the melody from Shadowdreaming.
And that is so confusing to me. I hear it, and
yep, that's right.
It doesn't make sense.
It's because that's all I did. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, if I keep the melody going, it's going to clash with the chords. But what's funny is, I don't know if you know about the Mandela effect, where sort of like common knowledge is just wrong. It's just everyone assumes it is because it's more salient or whatever. It's easier to think about. In my head, I've always thought that I've kept that going. That I've kept the Shadowdreaming while Light as Shadow's Death comes in, but apparently not. It's just that first time through. But I always hear it in my head because I did it the first time. It's still there. But yeah, I love when you can combine things, and I wish I had found more ways to do it, but I was running out of part space, so this is just my favorite little bit. Oh, man. And then right here is where I start adding in some of my own melody stuff. Almost like a little harp melody, or like a harp solo over this. I love it so much.
It's a worthy climax.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the whole mashup has its highlights but you managed to really write the climax and make it even a greater highlight than everything that has been there before.
Thank you very much. Although what I like is that I don't make it about me. I do add this little bit there, but it's the transition back into the part that I love. So I'm thinking in the jazz world, when people have done versions of songs where they change it so much, it's really becomes something entirely different, and that could be super cool. But that's not what I was going for. I didn't want to do a mashup that was so different it was a different piece. I really wanted it to be, I am presenting these ideas and themes that you came up with, just with my own little flair on it in places. So I'll add my little harp solo here, just like I added a little bit in Spring Showers, but I really knew I wanted it to be. We're definitely going to Light the Shadow's Death. So the one thing that I really wanted to mention about this is I had a lot of fun coming up with a new accompaniment for it, specifically in the guitar part. And when you hear it by itself, you realize there's a lot of repeated notes. And it's because they're supposed to sound like someone going back and forth between two notes, but often those other notes are in the harp part. So it gives a sense of momentum, but hopefully it's not taking up too much of the listener's attention. It's still about the main theme. So
I think it works pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel distracted, but with some focus, you can still manage to get those things.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things that I try and add in because I'm all about on repeat listenings. Is there still something there to be interesting? And if you've heard it so many times, you know the melody, you can be like, oh, what's going on in the accompaniment there? And I mean, that's how I listen to music. I can often listen to individual instruments, sometimes even when I don't intend to, which is, I don't know, it's really cool, but not every piece has the layers to dig into like that. So I'm glad that I was able to add that here. So the first time through, I think it's just pretty straightforward. But I think I added in some more harmony notes on the second time through. So it's not just a straight repeat. Yeah, so I did want to make sure it wasn't just repeating the same thing twice, as much as I love it. So I did add in a little bit of difference. Again, I was really running up against the part space limit there, so there's only so much you can change things. But this transition, your transition out of that, I loved so much. The way you go back and forth between these two chords, for anyone who knows what I mean when I say the word functional harmony, like a 5 chord going to a 1 chord, has a very strong push. It feels like it wants to go there, and when it gets there, it's very stable. It's like, oh, I've gone home. I'm where I want to be. Whereas these two chords, when you go back and forth between them, there's no push like that. You're like suspending the listener in time. You could go anywhere, and I love that because it means I can go anywhere. Exactly. So where do I go? I go exactly where nobody expected until you've heard it before. But it also is starting to bring the momentum down a little bit. It's like we built up to something, we're pulling it back down to this intro to Light Shadow's Death. And again, I love that melody. It's so evocative. It's so simple, but it's so effective in my mind. So I was trying to think about how can I have two instruments at once playing this in a way that doesn't suck, basically. So the guitar plays it just as written. The harp plays one final chord to round out the final section, and then it does this. And if you can hear at the end there, it's actually joining in on the melody for the second half there. So you have two different instruments playing the same melody, I mean, after the first initial part, but at different
rhythmic pattern.
Exactly, and that's a way that there's still this feeling of the harp and the guitar are not quite fighting with each other, but they're not quite meshing. There's something that's still not quite right there.
I mean, there's a musical concept you're describing that is a concert concertare in Latin means to work together and against each other at the same time. And I feel like this is the main, or one of the main themes you had going throughout this whole mashup.
I
So it's kind of a concert.
Cool. I didn't know that term. I've probably heard it at some point in my education. I've forgotten. So thank you for reintroducing that to me. That's exactly what I was going for. Actually, that's fantastic. So as we keep going through here, first time through, the harp keeps going, but again, it's still just plodding along at these like very simple like eighth notes until here. This second one is much more independent. It's doing its own thing. Until the very last phrase. Where they finally get together for the big dramatic, it's over. And then we end, of course, on a minor chord because no major chords here.
No, that would be too much.
Indeed.
I feel the same way. But I find it interesting because you said earlier you also considered starting with what you ended up using as the end. So are you still fine with this decision, or do you feel like that intro of the third movement maybe could have been better at the beginning?
No, 100%. I love what I've done. I can't hear it any other way now.
That's great.
Like, I can think about how it could work. It certainly could work. Like, if I did this, what I'd have to do is I'd have to start with no harp at all. I'd have to start bringing the harp in only on the second phrase. And then, rather than repeating that first phrase to end, I would probably go on with more of what was in your original intro and then start building up towards something. But I wanted to give just the little hint of, oh, are we going somewhere else? This is like the intro. We're working towards something, and then, no, we go back to that first phrase again, and no, final. So... You know me, I love playing with endings. It's not a fake ending unless it's not a Coriakin piece unless it has a fake ending of some kind.
And in this case, the fake ending is even the intro to another song.
Exactly, but again, it's playing with expectations. It's why can't you make the intro into the ending? Answer: you can.
You can.
Since
you
have
to figure out how.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's figuring out how is what it's all about. It's a puzzle. How can I put it together? The weird thing about this, though, which I know I didn't think about keys as much as you did. Mainly, I just found ways to make them work. I was in G minor again for a while, and then transition. It was really interesting because you're going back and forth between... How can I describe it? It's like a B flat minor over the D flat, going to a B flat minor over an E flat, which is sort of like a E flat minor 9 chord. And then here we have like part of this B flat minor chord, but then we add in this G flat, which turns it to an F sharp 7 chord. The upshot is that we went from G minor to like B flat minor, and now this last part is in B minor, an entirely different key we'd never been in before. And you know what? Fine. Whatever. It works. I don't care. But it's just going to different places, unexpected places, I think is what this whole piece is about. So, you know, we have a bit of the fun with the keys as well. So yeah, in general, like, a lot of this was written just based off what worked, but I do love the way that in the end, it's almost told a story. Starting with Shadowdreaming, so it's like, I don't know, let's make it about Coriakin, because why not? Coriakin's dreaming about the shadows. Shadows overwhelming, we hear, where all of a sudden it's too much, and then going from that, like, sort of like backing off a little bit away from the big block chords down to just the melody, marching towards the shadow plane. So we're getting out of the dream that was sort of more melancholy into a dream that's more, I don't know, like a more active nightmare sort of thing. And then we get to Light as Shadow's Death, where it's like, oh, it sort of feels like we're fighting back against the shadows. And then, of course, it being Coriakin, and you know me, I'm always so emo about everything I do with his role play. It's like, nope, he's still got his shadowed harp, so the shadows are still with him even at the end. So
Staying with his story, that works for me as well.
yeah,
Because when you really mash up the the marching towards the shadow plane and Light as Shadow's death, it is kind of, especially for a character like Coriakin, it is overwhelming. It is. He should have mixed some shadows overwhelming in there as well to make it 100% clear. But
oh, there you go.
I think it works for me because I never got the feeling that Coriakin really left the shadows behind and is free. He still has his shadow harp. It's still an ongoing topic. It might not be as present as it has been in the past, but it still is there and will probably continue to be there for quite a while.
And it's really cool that I can represent that musically. And if people get that, awesome. And if they don't see that, interpret it a different way, that's awesome too. So,
yeah.
Oh man. Well, I have to admit, like this Shadow Suite, as soon as I heard your suite, I knew that I wanted to do an arrangement of it, and I was so delighted that I was able to make it something that was worthy of the original piece, as I guess how I'd put it. So,
to me, it's more than that. To me, not only did I get this cool, different version of my music, but as I said in the beginning, to me, it is one of the greatest compliments you can get. Writing music anybody else finds inspiring, appealing enough to deal with it over hours. I think this is not a piece that you did write in 2 hours.
Nope.
This was probably a few weeks that you dealt with it constantly. Maybe not every day, but close to that, I would figure.
On that subject of that, yeah, it definitely, probably took at least 20 hours of like work over several weeks. And again, like you said, it's come up with some ideas, listen to it a lot, just let them rattle around, because so much of this is just turning it over and over in your head, being like, where could I go? What could I try? So it's really fun to do. But like you said, yeah, it is definitely some work.
Making someone deal with this voluntarily, that I think is one of the most the greatest compliments you can get as a musician, at least in our Clanlord Bard realm.
Well, what can I say except that you're welcome, and I thought you deserved it, so I wanted to give it to you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, and like you said, this is a piece that both of us have input into, so it was only natural, I guess, in the end, for it to become our theme music.
Yes. I was thinking about writing some original intro music when we started this idea of the Bardcast. But firstly, I didn't come up with something I liked. And secondly, the idea of having this tune that both of us have contributed to felt more appropriate than anything else I could have come up with. Only if I someday write a song, a mashup of your song, of your music, that could be where we change that.
Oh, that would be lovely. I'll look forward to that.
Oh, that's going to be a lot of work.
Again, like, so the problem with a lot of my pieces are that I jam so much into there isn't that much space for, like, you'd have to take out a lot to do another arrangement of it.
That's why I tend to look at your older pieces.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Just like Crunch.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I have on my to-do list your Ostinato.
Oh, I have not listened to that one in some time. That one, I believe, started off as a piano improvisation. I think that would be really interesting to do an arrangement of.
That's what I thought, yes. It lingers in my Google Docs of ideas and what I finished, but I haven't had the time to really get that started yet. But I like the idea, and I think it could work pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I have noticed is when you divide up an accompaniment between two instruments, it does free up some sonic space. So that is a way to, like, when you do a duet or trio arrangement of a solo piece, that can make things easier in terms of that problem specifically that I was talking about earlier. So.
Oh yeah, one question I had why did you choose guitar and harp? Because they were part of the original suite, or if I didn't use any harp at all for the original suite, would it have been another instrument?
I chose those because, in my mind, guitar is one of your characteristic instruments, and harp is Coriakin's characteristic instrument.
I see.
So, in my mind, this was always us two playing together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of like when I did Spring Showers, I did it basically harp and harp. I mean, lyra, obviously, but because that's what I think of when I think of Zeppel. So, I don't know. I always write these pieces not just for myself or for the audience, but I write them for the person that it's more or less a gift to. So I want them to feel like, or at least I want to feel like this is something I can play with you. So.
I like the idea. Yeah. And now it makes even more sense that I always get the guitar parts.
What can I say? I'm predictable.
And Coriakin actually has to get his shadow model talk.
One day, we'll see.
That could be an opportunity to
not
have to play. But he still does.
Oh my gosh. Maybe at some point he'll donate his harp to the Shadow Plane, and then I'll just not have anything. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, get another one.
No, I couldn't. Whatever. I'm getting off track. Maybe. All right. Well, I guess that's everything I really wanted to say about the suite. Thank you again for writing the original material, and I'm really glad that you appreciated the arrangement just as much as I hoped you would.
I certainly did, and I do until today. I've listened to this arrangement. I think it's way over 200 times over the last year or so. I keep coming back to it because there's so much new stuff, different stuff from what I did, but still a lot that I know, I feel attached to, and I'm proud of. So yeah, it's a great mixture to keep me close to it for a long time, and I think I'll be happy to hear it every single concert until I sometime will not log into Clanlord anymore. But until that day,
yeah, I've listened to all the movements of your suite and the arrangement probably, like many dozens of times over the last couple of days preparing for this podcast, and I don't hate it, and that's really good. Usually my working process for when I'm working on a piece is to listen to it over and over again while I'm trying to figure out what happens next, and there always comes a point during that process where I just hate what I'm listening to because I've listened to it so many times, it's just too much. And I mean, it was getting close a couple of days, but I never got there with this piece. It's good material. Maybe
you passed this already, and you're now in the Stockholm syndrome area.
That must be it. Oh well, there's worse ways to be.
You just missed the point where you hated it.
Oh man. All right. Well, on that note. Oh. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I've been Chris Coriakin, and
I'm Samuel that plays Bingro.
Indeed. Thank you very much for listening, and have a lovely day. Bye for now.